So the first part says, Robert is asking, so this is off topic. I know that homosexual practice is a sin and that lusting after someone is a sin for heterosexuals or homosexuals, but I read that homosexual attraction isn't a sin. Next part. What does that mean? When you're attracted to someone, don't you have some sexual attraction? Like if you are attracted to someone, you're going to lust after them, which is a sin. And then the next part is, how would you define attraction? So I think if we're getting at the essence here, he's kind of saying if homosexual or if does homosexual attraction relate to lust? Is that equate to lusting? If you're attracted, is it automatically a lust, or is there a line between attraction and lust?
And then is that the attraction a sin, not a sin? Where do you cross that line?
And would it be any different for a homosexual than for a heterosexual? I think that's kind of where it's also coming down to.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it gets to intentionality. So we see, for example, that as one pastor put it, it's not your fault if a bird like flies over your head and maybe, lands on your head. Like it happened. But the question is, do you allow that bird to build a nest in your head? Do you let it sit there and dwell and do its thing? Or do you quickly shoo it away? And that's kind of where the Bible comes in. If you are kind of entertaining and feeding that desire and listening to it, harboring it, now you're reaching a level of greater culpability. And so we all have our tendencies. We all have our lusts. And so this is one of the frustrations I voice in the way Christians tend to zero in a lot on homosexuals, is it misses the point where even heterosexuals almost all dealing with a great level of sexual sin as well, where pornography and these sorts of things are a huge problem. And Jesus said, just lusting after a woman in your heart is tantamount to committing adultery. So we really need to be closely guarding our heart, guarding our eyes, guarding our mind. And yeah, if we feel tempted, we feel that attraction, that's not something to feel guilty about, but is what do we do with it after we feel that temptation, we feel that lust? And there's a Bible verse that sort of articulates the step-by-step where we go from that lust, that initial attraction or that temptation, to then leading to how does it lead to sin. We find this in James chapter 1, starting at verse 14. And James says, but each one is tempted when he is drawn away by his own desire and enticed. So we're tempted when we are drawn away. So we're supposed to be a certain place or doing a certain thing, and then we get drawn away by our desires.
We're supposed to be connected to God and tuned into God.
Yeah, I mean, I think of Eve. She gets drawn away from Adam. She's now hanging at the forbidden tree, and lingering there, speaking to Satan, and just creating a situation where now she's encountering greater and greater and greater temptation, to the point of now she wants to feed that temptation and cave into it. James 1:15 goes on. It says, "Then when desire has conceived," he's using almost like sexual language, right? Where now the desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin, and sin, when it's fully grown, brings forth death. So we go from desire to temptation and being enticed to then the desire giving birth to the sin, and sin leads to death.
And to be clear, this isn't that all desire is bad. God put certain desires in our heart that are fine, but this is his own desires. These are desires that were not planted by God. This is pursuit of desires that lead away from God instead of to God.
Yeah, the Greek word there is epithemia, and it can mean desire, craving, longing, desire for what is forbidden, and lust. So it generally has more of the negative connotations to it, as opposed to, a noble desire. Tina, how about your thoughts?
And Robert, did we answer your question there?
We didn't talk about attraction.
Oh.
I'm sorry, you're waiting for me to comment.
Did you want to add anything on what we were talking about so far?
I mean, I think we do have to be really careful when we talk about this subject, because you have to, because when it comes to like, like you're saying, attraction is not a wrong thing, but because you can be attracted to things like you're saying that are good, but when it comes to, like you're saying, like giving into lust, like starting to feed into those thoughts of like doing something that you should not do.
Oh, no, Tina froze again.
Gross. There you go. I appreciate you guys sharing, James chapter 1, because I think that that's really a good illustration of where, you be careful but when it comes to just defining attraction, I mean, like attraction in and of itself is not a bad thing. Like you can be attracted to a painting, but then you realize, oh, it's kind of a disturbing painting. So you're like, okay, I don't really want to do this anymore. I don't want to, give into this. And so I'm going to look away. I'm not going to stay focused on it. And so it's like, I once heard a statement of like, when you're driving a car, you need to gaze out the front and glance at the side. And so like your gaze should be on Christ. Your number one should be on Christ and what's right. And then like, sometimes you might notice things on the side, but you can't focus on those things. Otherwise you're going to lose control. You're going to crash your car. And so, in the same way, I think, sometimes we can notice things and be like, oh, that's pretty. Like you might be driving and be like, oh, that's a pretty, flower, something you see in the side of the road, but you cannot, lose sight of what's important, which is the road, because you're going to, end up, hurting yourself or hurting other people. And I think that's very true as far as, your Christian walk or your Christian drive, in a sense that you need to, you might be attracted or notice things along the way that, could attract you, but, your focus needs to be on Christ and what is his will for your life. And, what is the right way, and, where is God leading you, not wherever you think, because again, it's going to end in, harm. And so when we look at Christ and what his plan is for your life, it's always what's best.
Mhm.
So, it's very easy to be interested in things, but, and it's not wrong to be like, oh, that's interesting. But then again, like the Bible says, keeping every thought under the, and taking into captivity every thought into the obedience of Christ. And so just keeping thinking about what you're thinking about, and just like, am I thinking about something that I should be thinking about, or am I thinking about something that I should not be,
Mhm.
dwelling on it and giving more attention to? And so, a thought might come in your head, whether you're, whatever, whatever, sexual orientation you may be, but you have to take that thought and be like, okay, I'm going to, take this under Christ's authority, and just say, God, I surrender this thought to you, and I ask you help me to put my thoughts in the right direction. And so I guess that's kind of where my thoughts are on that subject altogether. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, it's pretty well established that people are generally attracted to that which is most familiar to them. I mean, by beholding we become changed. That which we see the most of simply becomes more familiar and thus attractive to us. And everyone today, if you live in this world and you don't live in a bubble or a super small bubble, like you're bombarded with images.
They're not hearing us.
Robert's saying he can't hear us. I can hear them.
Oh, you can hear us? Okay.
Yeah, I could hear you just fine.
Okay. Good.
We are bombarded with images today. Everywhere you go to the store, bombarded with magazine covers. You turn on the television, bombarded with. You walk down a street, like in a city, you're bombarded with images everywhere you look, and it's not even always a conscious thing to be seeing these things, but we are, and our brains adapt to that and start to see we start to see things as attractive that we might not normally think of as attractive, but